You're listening to the Road to Wisdom podcast, weaving stories told by wonderful minds about all things motherhood, health, intimacy, politics, nature, and everything in between.
Join us on an adventure discovering unique experiences that we can learn from to enhance the ways in which we live.
We are your hosts, Chloe
and Keshia. Welcome everyone to the Road to Wisdom podcast. Today we have John Gray back in the studio. We are so excited to have you, John Gray. If you haven't listened to our first episode with John, please go back. It was full of incredible wisdom and points. And I guess now we're really happy to have you in here today because we're seeing something. I don't know actually if you're seeing it in your communities so much. We're seeing the breakdown of marriages and often children are involved. And I guess my first question for you, John, is why?
Wow, that's a big question. If we're talking about the breakdown of marriages where there's lots of little children involved, well, let me ask you back. When you listen to women expressing their complaints, what are they saying?
Do you want to hear some of my complaints or your complaints? I think it's just, I mean, there's a lot of different things, but I think it's just like the stress. I mean, we do so much, like women and men are both doing so much, but women are doing a lot. And I think we're doing a lot of it alone or we're trying to do it all. I don't know.
Can I be more specific?
Yeah, you be more specific.
What I hear a lot is it's a toxic relationship.
Which means nothing. Which really means nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the
emotional
complaints?
and like there's emotional abuse. And I'm hearing that in relationships where it is two good people and they have children that are good children and it's emotional abuse and it's a toxic relationship, it's a toxic environment. And that's like probably the most common thing that I hear. Now, not in every single case, it's two good people. Like sometimes there's infidelity involved. In cases, there's been, and gosh, infidelity stems, doesn't it? All the way from actually sleeping with someone else to maybe having a texting conversation with another person of the opposite sex. But yeah, what we're seeing essentially is just a lot of breakdown. And I mean, I personally think that it is a polarity thing. I think it could also be a lack of, I mean, we've just spoken to Alison Armstrong, and I do feel that women are constantly emasculating men, which I feel definitely falls into that category. But yeah, I think the most common complaint is just toxic relationship.
Okay, so I was just feeling you out for that, and I'm glad Allison talks about the emasculating of men. Our culture has emasculated men, not just women. The whole mindset that all women are taught. Now, I'm just taking a piece of the pie. There's so many different elements here. Just counseling one couple that really need to separate. Her husband does porn, takes marijuana, and drinks alcohol too much. Okay, it's unworkable. You have to create a separation. You can't give him what he wants, which is her love, her sex, her appreciation, if there's nothing to admire him for. So that goes on, but that's usually after problems erupt in the relationship. People are driven, and that's men driven to what we could call as toxic behaviors. I just don't like to just suddenly label things as toxic relationships, emotional abuse. It's like saying a guy who touches a woman raped her, putting it in the same category. There's ranges of toxicity and so forth. And we live in I hope I didn't offend anybody by that, but we can't just say this word and it applies to a little problem or a big problem. I mean, there's a huge difference. So I'm not wild about that. I'm not wild about this word, narcissistic men. Ask anybody who says, "Oh, all men are narcissistic." They don't know the definition in psychology of what a narcissist is. But what they could say is he's emotionally unavailable. That would be one symptom of a narcissist, but with so many other symptoms of grandiosity and what's good for me is good for everybody. And I'm the savior to the world. And I'm always right. Nobody else is right. So these are grandiose ideas. Okay. But this is not the typical, quote, narcissistic guy. He's what women will say is emotionally unavailable. All right. So this is our, if I use the word now, toxic psychology is trying to feminize men. Okay. And one of the ways we do that, our society does that, and women are just being indoctrinated by society. It'd be like if everybody said ice cream is the very best thing for you, and getting fat because of it is even better. And everybody was getting fat, and everybody was eating ice cream and saying, this is so good. And you'll live longer if you eat ice cream and get fat. People will all do it until they realize that was the wrong information. So the wrong information in relationships is that men and women are pretty much the same when we're not. We're so different that we can't even imagine. I'm writing now my 26th book analyzing how men and women are different. So my focus is what I'm writing on right now, which is one of the most backward ideas, is that men should talk about their feelings. And if he doesn't talk about his feelings, he's emotionally unavailable. And so she's pounding against him, trying to make him a girl, trying to get him to fulfill what a girlfriend would fulfill, which is chit chat. Oh, well, this happened to me today. And I got so stuck, and I was stuck on the freeway, and I couldn't get to my appointment, and my feet were hurting. These high heel shoes are bothering me so much. And another woman would say, I know just how you feel. And this happened to me, and this happened to me. And you feel this emotional connection. Well, men cannot give that to you. Men don't wear high heel shoes. It's one of my old examples. And I remember this person called on the radio show. It was a trans saying, I'm a guy. I know what that's like. It was like, but the reality is we're talking basic men are not going to relate to the things that women relate to. And so what women want is emotional connection. And the need for women to have emotional connection goes up the more women are out of balance, feeling overwhelmed and stressed. So here you are, two stressed mothers trying to put it all together in a modern world. It is so hard to have children today. And imagine all your kids. It used to be, go to Bali right now. I was just in Bali. And outside my hotel room, you'll see a tribe of women, maybe like 20 women with a flood of 40 kids, all going down to the river to do laundry. They're not stressed out at all. They're in nature. They're walking down. They've got rocks and they're pounding the clothes. They're talking. They're sharing. They don't care about how much money. Their husband is taking care of that. They live in shacks anyway. Material wealth is not anything important to them. What's important to them is raising their children, feeding their kids, getting food on the table, and spending time with other women. This is like a vitamin D. If your vitamin D is weak, you get sick all the time. Like everybody's getting sick all the time now. They're vitamin D deficient because they're not getting enough sunshine. Well, women are not getting enough just time to not worry about finances and those pressures and having help. Women used to help each other all the time. They don't now. You're sort of clustered in houses. You're trying to manage your kids. It's highly overwhelming. And in that situation, we can't go back to going down to the river to get laundry done. Not going to happen. I remember back in the 50s when the commercials came out, they said, oh, a life of convenience. Now we have washing machines. No longer, you don't have to go down to the river. I heard a story about an African tribe once, and these well-meaning people from America went in and said, we're going to give you plumbing so you don't have to walk to the well every day. They would spend an hour walking to the well, getting water and carrying it back. The people didn't want it because that was their social life. Walking to the well, getting the water, and talking and sharing is like a post office, and then going back home. This was real life. This was people interacting with each other, not being so driven by, what's on social media, what are my emails, what are my posts. And then adding to that, the massive comparing of what we have as kind of normal people to the elites, who fly around the world and they see these beautiful places and they go these places. And it's only by nature that we go kind of compare our lives with others. And then we feel even more left out. We feel more excluded. We feel like we're missing out. So there's a lot of stresses on us. It used to be that, well, if you look in Bali, for example, and I will mention they have relationship problems. And this is how they're solved. They live in these compounds. The whole family lives in a compound. And first of all, the only problem they have for divorce is the husband gets married and now the wife has to come live in his family compound. And his family compound, the problem is between the mother and the mother-in-law, because she's used to controlling the son. And now the wife controls the man. Wife controls her husband. We do things to make ourselves happy, and we're in conflict. We're trying to make the mother happy. The mother is trying to control the scene. She's used to being in control. So what to do? I know in the Christian religion, they said, forget about your parents. Your wife becomes more important. Okay. In Bali, they don't have that solution. In the Balinese situation, the solution is they build a second kitchen in the compound.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
That's right. Too many cooks in the kitchen. All right. So that's the first one. The second one is, if you have marriage problems, there's these compounds and they're in groups of 100. It's all organized like it's 100 groups that have to meet together on Saturday. And if you have family disputes, you have to talk about your problems in front of 100 other families and get their advice to follow. So nobody wants to do that. So nobody gets divorced. Okay. So there's some practicalities in all of that. But coming back to our relationships today, our problems are just so exaggerated, so expanded, because we're no longer living together as a tribe. Women don't have that tribe and support. I know through your work you do, is you're creating a tribe for women at least to connect and to share and so forth. And that's very important. And I don't want to minimize it in any way, but anybody who understands sort of the esoterics of life is we have an auric field, and the auric field goes out 6 feet. And 3 feet on my side, 3 feet on the other side. And it's so funny that during the lockdown, which destroyed so many people's lives, you weren't supposed to stand within 6 feet of someone. Well, if you can't be within 6 feet of other people, you can't feed on the energetics of social, emotional support. I mean, for me, I can be sort of held up in my cave here, writing and writing. There'll be a limit to my well-being unless I get out and go to the grocery store. I just go to the grocery store and around other people. Your soul needs to connect with other people in other situations. This is why we do have sporting events and all of that, where people can come together and mix all the energetic fields together, because, some person is strong, I'm weak, they're strong. And I'm born that way. It's not like I'm a weak person. It's just that certain things I don't have that other people have. And to be a whole person, we come together in our energetic field. It's the same thing with men and women in relationships. And there is this amazing study which showed that they analyzed women's immune system and men's immune system, and they found markers in which you could measure 5 different markers where one person was strong and the other person was weak. Okay, so you can measure, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And then they measured these different markers, and they had men wear a t-shirt for 3 days. So his smell would be in the t-shirt. They put it in a bag. And then they had all these women smell what smells would make her feel attracted to the man she never met. Well, it turned out that the women who were the t-shirts a woman was attracted to would always have a strength in his immune system where she was weak. And this worked 80% of the time. 20% of the time it didn't work. And they wondered, why didn't it work? Well, it didn't work. It turned out that those women were on birth control when they met their partners. The conclusion is that when you're on birth control, your ability to pick the right person is somewhat limited because you're not able to experience the smell of the other person. Not just the energetics, but there's also smell. Smell is our pheromones. When I see my wife, like today, my wife just got back from yoga and Pilates, and she was feeling very pretty and wanted me to look at her. So I already know if she's feeling very pretty and look, she's already going to be in the mood to have sex. So she says, look how pretty I am. I said, you look so good, honey. Went and gave her a hug. And right away, my body, I'm in the business of writing a book. The last thing I'm thinking about is sex. My body wakes up to sex. One is I intellectually know she wants to have sex, but two, her body is putting out pheromones. These pheromones are saying that she's in the mood to have sex. Pheromones get those pheromones get produced when a woman's estrogen levels are doubling. If you look in the mirror and feel I'm beautiful, your estrogen levels go up. If you need help and somebody helps you, your estrogen levels go up. Whenever you feel I feel safe and I can depend on someone for my safety, it's different from, oh, I'm a strong, powerful woman. I can protect myself. I've got mace and I've got alarm systems. Okay, that's one thing. But another one is where you feel vulnerable and yet you have somebody with you who you feel I can depend on this person to protect me. Life is dangerous and I depend on this person to protect me. Your estrogen levels will shoot up. One of my fun things I explain to men is one of the best forms of foreplay, make your wife happy, is drive her in the car in a way that makes her feel safe. Men don't know this. They're just complaining, oh, she's telling me what to do all the time. I tell my wife, anytime I'm going too fast, just grab the handle. I'll stop right away. And she doesn't like me running through red lights. So she'll say, if you stop at a yellow light.
Why?
I don't know why she
yes,
doesn't
exactly
like it.
why. That's from my point of view. But from her point of view, I don't feel safe when I run red light. I see a yellow light, I just speed up. Just for fun, little entertainment. One time I saw a yellow light and I have a fast car and I just pushed the pedal and shot through that light. Policeman caught me. Lights came over. He pulled me over. And I said to him, I made it through that yellow light. I made it through that yellow light. He said, yes, you did at 90 miles an hour. So I got a ticket. So anyway, now the point being that I would never drive that way when my wife's in the car. Very, very important. Why? Because here's a perfect setting where she feels powerless. Her life is in danger. She's dependent on me for her safety. And so if I can let her know that when I drive, I'll drive the way I like to drive, unless anything makes her uncomfortable, let me know. And I'll immediately adjust. And even sometimes I purposely drive a little faster so she can pull the handle so that she can feel my husband will respond to me just like that. So there's a place of where women can feel I can ask for help and get it. And that's part of the overwhelm these mothers are feeling is they don't know how to ask for help. They don't get enough help. They feel they have to do it all their own. And that's the symptom of stress in a woman's body. And you can measure her hormones at that time. Her estrogen levels are low. Her testosterone is up. Being a mother, I see your hand, as a CEO, you're producing testosterone, male energy all the time. What you need a man for is how to help you come back to your female side. Men are not taught how to do that. They have no idea how to do that. And women have no idea how to ask a man to do that, how to create a situation, a space for him to do that. There's a feeling like, well, he should just know, because if you lived in a tribe of women, they would all know. He doesn't know.
So I'd love to explore this idea of safety because, and I'll share a little anecdote. For the last 6 months, my husband has decided that he wanted to buff up a little bit, which is amazing. I really enjoy that. But his body's always been very beautiful to look at, and whether he works out or not doesn't really change that. However, he bought some kettlebells and started working out on our deck nearly every day. Yeah, it has changed things in such a way that I feel so much safer, and I can't even really describe it. I don't have the words for it, but I'm just like, I just have this, like, you just feel stronger and steadier, I think. I don't know. And I'm like, I feel like this overwhelming sense of safety in that. And
yes, it's amazing.
It's amazing. And probably like the pheromones. I'm sure there's a whole range of things that have contributed to that feeling. But I wanted to go into this sense of safety for especially us as mums, because usually we come into these relationships, we're both making money, we're both earning, we're both contributing to the household 50-50. And then we have children. And I mean, not so much maybe in city environments, they seek childcare quite quickly and women go back into the workforce quite quickly and everything goes back to as 50-50 as they think 50-50. I don't think it ever is, but we try and replicate that to the best of our degree.
It's ridiculous to try to do anything 50-50. This is the stupidest idea.
I agree.
Women should do what they like to do, and men should do what women like them to do. Period.
All right, I think we can wrap
That's
it up.
the reality. This 50-50 thing is
I think we've got what we wanted.
I think we've got exactly what we wanted. We can end this conversation here.
Well, look at the whole history. Look at the history of men and women. Go back as far as you can. Wherever there are women, you could ask the women, what is it that you would like to do in your life? And what is it you don't like to do? And what man will do the things I don't like to do? And some guy's going to sign up and say, I'm happy to do the things you don't like to do. That's what men are about. The problem for men is when they take on that, they want to be paid. Women don't know how to pay men. And it's not just sex, although if you're in the mood for sex, whenever he comes home, that would be amazing payment. It's not realistic for most women. So the idea there is her happiness. When do women want to have sex? And biologically, women want to have sex, not just I'm happy to have sex, but I want to have sex, is whenever their estrogen levels double. And so as an animal, we are animals, partial animals. That happens primarily at the time of ovulation. But what's different between humans and animals, a big difference, is that a woman can have double the estrogen even without being at the time of ovulation. At actually any time during her life, during the month, by having the right skills in a relationship, he can say things and do things for her that will allow her estrogen levels to double. And that's what we call in the Western world romantic skills, which is men provide extra support for women, making them feel extra special, extra seen, extra heard, extra supported. And, this whole idea of extra is really men can't comprehend it because, when you talk about Valentine's Day, most men will say, well, every day I love you. Why do I have to show my love this day? That means I don't show it at other times. It's like I'm not enough. I said, no, you have to explain for women. They always need a little more. That's the reality. And this is what monogamy is. Monogamy is she gets more than any other woman, period. And when she gets more than any other woman, mean this special sacred thing we call sex, I'm only going to have sex with her, but it's also financial monogamy. I'm only going to support her. I'm not supporting anybody else. She is the priority. So, if we were to actually talk about what narcissism is selfishness, pure femininity is complete narcissism from that point of view. It's all about me. When women come into counseling, she's got 15 lists of he doesn't listen, he's not affectionate, he doesn't support, he didn't put this away. I asked him to do this, he forgot to do it. He never does this. He just thinks about himself. But it's her long list of complaints. She's talking about me, me, me. Now, when men come in complaint, if they're somewhat masculine and they haven't been completely shifted over to their female side, they'll say things like, John, if the woman was happy, everything would be fine. There's no big deal here. Why is she making everything a big deal? Why is everything a big drama? Why is everything a problem? Why can't we just be happy with what we got? I'm happy with what we got. That's your typical guy. If you're a male guy, he doesn't understand women. He doesn't understand the concept of romance. And even when that guy, what I do is I'll bust him. He'll say, well, no matter what I do, it's never enough to make her happy. I say, well, what do you do? And he tells me, well, I'm a good provider. I don't yell and scream. I come home. I'm there for her. I empty the trash. I say, okay, that's all good. That's not enough. You're not doing enough. And he doesn't understand. Well, what more do you expect me to do? Because see, men live in a world where their happiness is gauged by your happiness. If you're happy, he feels successful. That's actually the magic word is success. When men feel successful, their testosterone goes up. And then when we can be successful in making a woman happier, our testosterone goes even higher. So we like that. So when she's not happy, a part of us feels not so happy. And then we use our logic and reason. If we don't understand women, we think, well, why aren't you happy? What's missing? What's wrong? What he doesn't know what's wrong is women are starved for emotional attention, affection, support, someone who's friendly and happy to help around the house. because we never saw our fathers doing that. Our fathers were usually at the office or they were out. We didn't have a picture of that. And even in traditional times, that father was out on the farm and he was, he wasn't at home doing the homemaking. There was more of a tradition of women take care of the home, men take care of the outside. Women take care of the children, men take care of the outside. But taking care of the children in those days was totally different. You said to your kids, go play. I grew up in a neighborhood where my mother had 7 kids. I never saw her stressed out. They never wanted a divorce. My dad didn't have any romantic skills. He had a good job. We lived in a nice neighborhood. He would come home at night, and if any of the boys were misbehaving, he was the policeman. He'd spank us. That was it. So he was a policeman, he was the provider, and the neighborhood was a provider, and there was police in the neighborhood. There wasn't all this craziness today. Children weren't being abducted. It wasn't, or if you sent your kids out to play, somebody's going to put you in jail. It was totally different world. And when I go down into the indigenous tribes, that's the world they live in. Kids are all just playing around. They're all there. There's usually one parent looking out for them. You had so much help. Femininity needs help. And when women are stressed, they're not getting enough help. And so in our modern world, we have to figure out, where does that help come from? And while we can get intellectual help, the TV drains us, okay? And what happened during the shutdown, where everybody watched so much TV, they stayed in their home, they lost their human spirit and motivation. Our stress levels are still high. I'm still recovering from it, meaning that I don't want to go anywhere. People say, oh, you're in your 70s. Don't you want to go on vacations? No, I like my house. It's all really nice. I don't need to go anywhere. Because, there's a study done on fleas. Fleas are so tiny. You put like 10,000 fleas in a jar and they'll jump out. You got to get them down in that jar. And then you put a roof on it. And 3 days later, you take this jar top off and they'll never jump out. They're conditioned to be homebodies. We're all conditioned to watch TV. We're conditioned to our phones. We're conditioned to comparing ourselves all the time. All we do is we feel we're missing out, and we are missing out on the energy exchange of being with other human beings. It's very, very important that we have that. And for women, it looks more like talking, sharing, hearing. And yes, it's nice online to do it. It's completely different to be in the presence with another woman, woman to woman, looking at each other, eye contact, energetic exchange, talking and complaining. What women need to do is complain to each other about their lives. When they complain, then they should start shifting gears to focusing on what's good, and also coming back to an awareness of it's not as bad as they said, and coming back to an awareness that when they're talking about problems in their marriage, they have to reveal to their friends how they make it worse. Okay, that's a very important thing. We always leave out how we contribute to the problem when we talk about the problem, because you don't get as much sympathy and empathy. It's just like, what? You're doing all right? So it's a discipline. It's my little beef with a lot of counselors. A lot of counselors are really great. They do active listening. They help you hear yourself, help you see yourself. That's always very helpful. But when the case is, when somebody doesn't have a database enough to figure out what they're doing wrong, they'll never figure out what they're doing wrong. And here's one thing that we're doing wrong. And under the big heading, expecting men to be like women, expecting men to talk about their feelings. The unavailable man, the man who doesn't share, the man who doesn't open up. That man, it can be so available to you if you just shift to, I want a man who hears me, a man who empathizes with me, a man who cares about what I feel, a man who hears me, sees me, validates me, doesn't judge me. That's intimacy. So that's a kind of intimacy which is of the right polarity, where he is penetrating into her. See, he's being masculine by saying nothing. He is silent. He is objective. He is simply a mirror for you to sort of put your ideas out there so that you can see them in the light of someone not judging you, someone who loves you, someone who has compassion for you. Now, that is the polarity. Now, 2 women can't do that. If 2 women get together and one shares, the other listens, and the way she gives a mirror is she shares her experience back. Women don't have the amount of, generally speaking, the objectivity of a male side. See, part of the male side is I have nothing to say unless you're asked me to do anything. My mind is blank unless given a task. I'm purely objective. So many women want to, my husband, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? He'll say nothing. It's true. This is pure masculinity. It's blank. It's ready to go. It's ready to move. And it doesn't talk about his feelings. As a matter of fact, he doesn't feel much at all. He doesn't miss feeling. He doesn't feel feeling. And you kind of go, well, I want to feel him. Well, how do you feel him? You feel him by letting him feel you. If I touch you, you will feel me. You can touch me and you can feel me that way, but I can touch you and you will you will feel me touching you. And if you're feminine and you're vulnerable in your sharing, then when he touches you, what's going to touch you is his vulnerable side. I experience feeling through my wife's feelings and become a more balanced male who is completely logical, rational, objective, no emotion. But then with my wife, I have feeling through her, and now I'm a balanced guy. Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to give you an example that I'm sure lots of women would experience. What happens when you're going about your day and you think everything's really good, and then your partner or husband comes home and they're like, and like slamming doors a little bit too hard and like rolling their eyes and doing this thing. And it feels a lot like resentment. And then you like kind of want to reach in there and be like, so what's going on? Like, oh, nothing. And they'll keep kind of stomping around. Oh, I have to do this now. And like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, you don't have to. Could you explain to me, because in that moment, if I've ever experienced that, I haven't. My husband's perfect. But if I would have experienced that, I would be very inclined to try and get my husband to talk so I understand what's going on there so we can work together to, settle this problem.
Okay, so why do you want him to get him to talk?
So because I can't read his mind. Why are you upset?
But why do you need to do that? Did he ask you for help?
He didn't. But if the aggression's coming out towards me,
well, that's different. That's different. You're saying he's stomping around the house, so let him stomp around the house. That has nothing to do with you. See, we'll continue with this, but the idea that women have is if we can talk about something, you'll feel better. No, that's not true. You, as a woman, if I can get you to talk about something, you will feel better. Biologically, you have to feel better if I don't interrupt the process, if I can get you to talk without reacting to you, but just letting you talk. And if I can have some compassion for you, then you'll get through it even faster. Because what will happen is when you talk about feelings, talk about what's inside, what's going on inside, estrogen levels go higher if somebody listens. And even if somebody doesn't listen, they'll still go higher. Just the more somebody feels connection to you, the higher your estrogen levels will go because you'll feel safer and you feel I'm depending on them. Their empathy, their compassion allows me to open up even more and open up. You need to open up. And then you become more reasonable. Reasonable is another thing to be upset about. Anytime you're upset, if you just take the concept, whenever you're upset, you're being unreasonable. You're being emotional. Being upset is unreasonable. Why can we say that? Because you can be upset about something and talk to a therapist, and afterwards you feel fine. Nothing changed in your outer world, okay? Now, sometimes if you have a good therapist, something will change in your outer world, which is you. You will actually realize that you're part of the problem rather than feeling like a victim, which a lot of therapists just sit there and go, oh, yes, I know, it feels so terrible. It's awful. What did he do then? And this goes on. And then you feel better. You will feel better because you got empathy, but you didn't learn, how am I going to change my life? How am I going to change the outer world situation? If there's a problem, how do I solve it? That's using logic. That's common sense. That's being rational. So behind every emotional upset is missing logic and ration and so forth. It's like, think about Star Trek. Spock never got upset about anything. And this is me. I don't get upset about anything. And if I do, you know what I tell my wife? Like if I come home and I'm stomping, although I don't, if I'm just even breathing heavier, or if I'm upset and something might pop out, my wife's response to me is, John, you're just overreacting. Suck it up. Get over it. I tell her to say that to me. I need that from my wife. Not, oh my gosh, what is it? Can I help you? Let's talk about it. No, stay out of the cave. This is, I can process it on my own, and your husband doesn't do a good job, or whoever this is who stomps around.
Not my husband.
Clearly, not your husband, but but this is very different from how he's treating her. We're just talking about a guy who's not coming home feeling happy and positive and whatever. He's not able to solve his problems.
Mhm.
So what he has to do is take time to forget his problems, and maybe he's not good at that. But this is what, like ancient days, men were all taught how to meditate. Meditation. What is the purpose of meditation but to forget your problems? That's what it is. And yet, a man is so a little confused with a wife when she's complaining about something. He'll say, hey, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. That's not what I meant. He thinks that's supposed to solve the problem. Oh, that's a great one where he says, that's not what I meant. So just forget it. She's upset. You have to let her react. And men don't know how to do that. And my gosh, when I think about you women with 5 children, my gosh, you need to talk a lot about everything that went wrong today. And you have to vent. And the way you get a man to listen when you vent, this is another chapter in the book, which is how to talk so a man will listen. But did we cover the first one? I don't know if we fully got that, which is, this is the stupidest thing in the world. All the books are saying it, not all, but all the universities are teaching it. First, they're teaching that you can choose to be man or woman, which is not what I agree with.
Neither do we.
Okay, right. But see, I watched all this happen. Back in the 70s, they're all saying men and women are the same. I'm going, what? Wait a second. They're not the same. We're different from different planets. Come on. And if you don't have that understanding, then your expectations will be wrong. Your interpretations will be wrong. The guy who doesn't want to talk, a woman might think he's angry with me. He doesn't love me as much. He's not there for me. I did something wrong, but what did I do wrong? Oh, I should punish him now. What's he treating me this way? But he's not doing anything to you. He's just in his space. My wife comes up to me quite a bit sometimes, and she'll say, okay, she says, let's talk. And I say, okay. She says, we'll talk. And I said, I have nothing to say. If you want to ask me a question about something, I have something to say. Ask me a question. I'm a problem solver, but if there's no problem, there's nothing for me to say. So, but she respects that. Now she understands, many, many years, she understands that if I'm in a bad mood, I'm just going to sit and watch TV. Or I'll process my feelings. There is a place for men to look at their emotions. I am by nature a more emotional man. Some men are more emotional. Some men are not. So if I have emotions, what I've learned to do is never talk. If you talk out loud to your partner when you're emotional, your estrogen levels go up. And the only reason you were upset is because your estrogen levels were too high if you're a man. Mm-hmm. So it's as simple as that. There's never a reason for me to utter a complaint unless it's a request or a friendly nod. Hey, this is what I prefer. This is what I would like. Like on an even keel, as opposed to, you did this to me, or I can't take it when you do that, or this makes me sick. Anything that irritates and annoys me is none of her business. What she needs from me is kindness, compassion, love. And women go, yeah, I'd like him to be in touch with those feelings. Well, that's easy. If you don't try to probe into his negative feelings, then what you'll get from him is positive feelings. But when you probe into a man when he doesn't want to talk, or get him to talk when he seems annoyed, or if you start in an argument and now you're starting to argue and he's starting to have emotions, kabang, you got to end that conversation right away. And women will just use their logic. They're very smart and they'll argue. Oh, I was talking to a woman today. She's, he's the one who's so argumentative. Well, what did he say? He said, well, why would you say that? She says, it was something like, he said, I'm going to speak my truth. And her husband said, this is a funny story. She says, I want to speak my truth. And he says, don't say that. That's what all the gay people say. They're going to speak their truth. They make up the truth. And so then she says, well, what about this? And what about this? And then she went into this big argument. She could have said, okay, instead of speak my truth, I'll just say what I think. He says, that's good. That's good. Just say what you think. So, it's so simple. But no, she wanted to argue this whole thing out, And you have to be aware of how when there's two people, there's two arguments. Now, for me, what I teach men, don't ever utter a word when you're feeling frustrated or annoyed. You just have to suck it in. And I don't do this perfectly. I'll give you an example. Just the other day, I was driving along, and my wife told me while I was driving, she was feeling very stressed about something that happened. Okay. And so already there's sort of a disconnect because she's not feeling happy. I'm not feeling that connected to her when she's feeling all stressed. And so then she started giving me driving instructions. Well, you shouldn't be in this lane anyway. Well, you could have gotten over there. And then she says, if you just stay in this lane, you'll be fine later. And after the third one, I said, I can drive myself. I don't need any help. Okay. But my tone of voice was all of that frustration that I was feeling because she'd given me 3 driving instructions. Like I didn't know how to drive, much better driver than her. so she's, and everybody knows that for sure. She would agree to that. And so anyway, I had this frustration built up. Now, had I not spoken out within 3 minutes, 5 minutes of driving, I could have let it go. I would just go, I just contain the frustration, and I go, I hate it when she does that, but she's having a hard day. It's probably hard. She didn't do it all the time after all. Yeah, that's awful, but thank God she didn't do it every day. So this is what men do. They rationalize. Yeah, I have a reason to be upset with her, but there's a lot of other reasons why I don't need to be upset with her. And yeah, if I say anything, it's only going to make it worse. And boy, did it. As soon as I blurted out, well, look, I'm a better than whatever I said. I don't need your driving instructions. I can drive myself. I'm a much better driver than you. Okay, she said, I don't want to talk to you, which I'm glad she did, because some women would just go at it, and bring in the history of every mistake I've ever made. Well, the other day you were driving like this and you didn't do that, blah, 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 blah. So, but still, once she shut down, I don't want to talk to you. How do you make up again? So again, you can go for days without being friendly towards each other when people don't know how to make up. So you have to know how to make up. So I had to recognize, even though she did 3 things, I just said one thing that was actually logically true, but packed with negative emotion. So I basically let it settle for a little while. And then I'm so sorry that I blurted out my feelings like that. That was cruel of me. That was insensitive. You're having a hard day. And she smiled and she says, thank you. I blew it too. And then she saw her side of it. Thank goodness we can both look at our mistakes. But it took me, it could have been her. She could have come back and said, I'm so sorry I was doing that. Whoever wants to be the bigger person. I'm an expert at this, so I'm always the bigger person. Because I understand I make mistakes. Things don't go wrong unless you make a mistake. Women don't know the mistakes they make. That's why men are from Mars, women are from Venus is so important. Just even to ask a man what he's feeling twice is a mistake. What's bothering you? What's going on? That will actually make him in touch with what's bothering him. He doesn't need to be in touch with what's bothering him at that moment. He's taking some time to temporarily forget what's bothering him. I remember the funniest thing when I was writing Men Are From Mars, or maybe one of the later books. It just happened where we'd moved into this new house. Men Are From Mars was a big success. I had money. Now I bought a house, and I wanted to put this sound system that would work in different rooms with one control system. Stupid idea. Yeah, centralized government is a terrible thing. Centralized sound system. It's just more wires and more connections and more overhead and more waste. But anyway, this guy took 3 months, and I was so frustrated. Everything was working except this one system, and I was paying all this money. He kept missing appointments, not doing it. He couldn't fix it. So, my frustration's building until finally I'm just sick of this guy. I called him. I said, you need to get over here right now and get this done. I've already paid you so much, and you haven't finished it. And he says, I would come over, but I have mono. So I just like that he's sick. So I can't be mad at him if he's sick. So anyway, I let go of my frustration. I said, okay, nothing I can do about it, so forget it. And so it was annoying me. This is a big annoyance, all right? So I'm forgotten it. And as I'm going to bed that night, I remember my wife, not understanding men fully, she says, his name was Daryl. She says, so tell me about Daryl. What's going on? And I went, don't talk about Daryl. I was trying to forget Daryl. Now I have to think about him before I'm going to bed. It just brought it all back up again. So it's like, she thought she was being like the loving wife. Do you want to talk about Daryl? How's the sound system going? And then not only did I tell her he's got mono, so he can't come and do it. She goes, well, what did she say? She had some more advice, well, have you told him that if he doesn't do this, then you're going to have to find somebody else? No, I haven't told him that. I don't want to bother finding somebody. We don't need to talk about the problem when I'm trying to forget the problem. But see, this is women. They think conversation is the solution to everything because for them, it is. So then there's a thing that women have to understand about men. We bond through silence. We don't share our experience. We don't share about our experience. We share experiences. You want to talk to a man, go for a walk with him, go sailing with him, go play tennis with him, do something and share your experience. Share the experience of doing something rather than actually talking about your experience. Yes, I love your hand coming up.
Because I don't want to disrupt before the end of the point, but I'll remember what I want to ask.
Yeah, go ahead. It's good. It's a fun conversation.
So what about in an instance where, or like in situations, I actually feel like in a lot of situations in my life, there are men who are talking about their problems. Like men who I am friends with who will just come and start talking to me about their problems.
Yeah, they're feminized men.
Oh, okay. So how do we fix that?
Stop listening to them. I mean, it's a delicate thing. They're on their female side. They don't want to be rejected. So you just don't encourage it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't engage in it. Basically you out female them. Whenever a man starts to talk too much, and too much is anytime it's about feelings, go, yeah, I relate to that. And then out feeling him. Start talking about things in your own life. It's like two kinds of sex. You can go into a man, there's only one hole. You can go into a woman, there's the right hole. As in men need to go into women. Women do not need to go into men. We have to let go of this idea. And look at some of the romantic novels. It's always what turns women on is the billionaire who can provide for her, but he doesn't have any feelings. He's mostly shut down, and all billions are narcissists anyway. So she's attracted to that. Then you get the loner, he broods and he doesn't talk about his feelings, and she tries to help him. This is where women feel powerless. When women feel, one aspect of it is women want to have a man in touch with his vulnerable feelings. So you feel powerful at that time, because then you can feel you can earn his love. Because the way a man could earn your love is by making it safe for you to be vulnerable and to be there when you're vulnerable. If I can be there for you when you're vulnerable, you'll love me more. But so you assume if I can be there when he's vulnerable, he'll love me more, and he'll just like it. Sure, he'll like it, but he'll just become more feminized, lazy, irritable, grumpy, and have more to complain about. We have this whole complaining society of men who have no power to just water off the back. No big deal. Don't worry about it. Okay, I just lost all this money. It sucks, but I'm going to fix it. I'll solve the problem again. And my friends are like amazed at me. I used to be a wealthy man. I had a trust, a fund of $30 million, and the fund manager died, and turned out I had zero. Plus all these lawsuits against him. So there's no way I'll get my money back. So this happened. This happened this year for me. It was amazing. And everybody goes, why aren't you massively depressed? Because I made it once, I can make it again. And you know what it did for me? Just to understand about men. I haven't written a book in 8 years. I'm writing a book again. For men, if you don't have to do something, don't do it. Why do it? I got what is behind me. You can't see them, but there's 30 books. Why do I have to write another book? Well, I have plenty of ideas, but to motivate me to sit down in this cave and spend hours and hours and hours writing, which is hard work. It's my books, at least, hard work. It's hours and hours and hours. And I have a really fun life. And not that I don't have fun when I'm writing, but I don't get to spend time with my grandchildren as much. I don't get time with my wife as much. I don't get as much sex as I want. I don't get enough time to meditate as much as I want. I don't get as much entertainment as I want. Those are all nice things, but that's all my female side. Now I got to suck up and be my man. And I'm doing it. And boy, is my wife happy. She just like, think of what a shock she would have. And I said, no, I'm man up. I'm ready to go. I'll make some more money. It's not like I'm completely poor. Okay. But when you lose that big a chunk of money, it's a big shock. Yeah.
That brings us to the end of part 1 with John Gray. Stick around next week for part 2. We decided to split this very long, beautiful 2-hour conversation into 2 episodes. And next episode, we actually start off with discussing the financial dynamics between men and women in partnership. And we just straight up asked John, what would he say to a man who expects his partner to contribute 50-50? We also talk about what men really need and what do women need, and how we actually create a lot of our own problems in partnership.
and Keshia and I have a couple of personal shares in there and plenty more. So tune in for that next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Road to Wisdom podcast. To join the journey, you can follow us on Instagram at theroadtowisdom.podcast and at www.theroadtowisdompodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We look forward to seeing you next week with more juicy content.